Good morning guys, it's a really beautiful day today. We're on the 5th of February and the sun is shining and I can feel the heat of it on my face. It's just so nice, and this is the kind of day where you just want to get loads of jobs done, because today I want to share with you something that I got requested for last week, which was to make a video about sowing seeds. So this week I've put together a list of 10 tips that I want to share with you about growing cut flowers from seed. The first tip that I want to share with you is to sow the same or similar varieties in an individual seed tray. So if I was going to seed this tray, I would make sure that I was sowing things with similar characteristics into this tray. So for example, I've got my stash of seeds here. If I wanted to sow sunflowers in this tray, but I only wanted to fill half the tray, I wouldn't, for example, pick up this euphorbia seed packet, because these sometimes need cold stratification. So if I've got to pick up this tray and put it into the fridge to stratify it in the cold, then that's not going to work for my sunflower seeds. So always make sure you are looking at the seed packets and see what seeds like to be treated like, and then you will be able to get your seed tray off to a nice start, and you'll be able to prick out all of your plants at the same time. So things that you know are going to germinate quickly and you can get out into the field all at the same time, then you're not going to be left with half of an empty tray here if you've planted out your sunflowers and then you've got something else that's waiting in here. So in my greenhouse, space is at a premium, so I want to be able to prick out a full tray and then that's done, and then I can get another tray put onto the greenhouse staging. So my second tip is probably one of the most important tips of all, which is to read the seed packets. You've got to read the instructions on these packets. These seed companies, they know what they're doing. They've trialed these seeds and they know how to get them to germinate. I made the mistake in the past of just treating every single seed the same, just filling my tray with compost, sprinkling the seed on and just hoping for the best. But it's not the same for everything. So sunflower seeds like to have light eliminated, so maybe I would cover the tray with a cardboard sheet or something. Some seeds like to have light to germinate, so I wouldn't cover the seeds with any vermiculite or sieved compost. Just read the instructions, follow the instructions, and then you are on for a winner. Tip number 3 is to make sure you are picking the right varieties for cutting. You want to be choosing things that can grow in the UK climate. There's lots of nice things, especially on Chiltern seeds where I get mine from, that grow well in places like South Africa, and obviously they aren't going to do well in this country. You're not going to have a full bed of them. For example, Protea or Celosia, they like really warm climates, so it's going to be really tricky for you to provide the conditions for those to grow. So if you want to be able to cut lots and lots of nice flowers for the vase, then you just want to be growing varieties that like our conditions in the UK. The other thing is that you need to make sure that you are choosing varieties that are tall enough to be using for cut flowers. So don't be buying bedding plants and things like that. You need to look at how high things grow and make sure that they're going to be good enough for putting into vases and bouquets and things. So tip number 4 is to make sure that you are sowing enough flower seeds for the plants that you're going to need. So I've got beds outside that are 9 meters long, and I can't remember exactly how wide they are. I need to calculate how many plants I need to put into my beds each year. So I'll take you outside and I'll show you how we calculate that. So here we are in the flower field looking at our flower beds, and this is the first bed that I planted last autumn using our new weed membrane technique. So we've started covering our beds with weed membrane just to try and avoid the pressure that we get from weeds. So these foxgloves are spaced 9 inches apart, and on this bed I've got 108 plants altogether. So I know that my plants need 9-inch spacing, so I draw it out and calculate how many plants I'm going to need. So once I've looked at the plant spacing and I've figured out how many plants I need per bed, I need to choose which seed tray I'm going to sow into. So For example, the foxglove bed that I showed you, I need 108 plants for that flower bed. So I've got this seed tray that holds 84 plugs. So I might sow 1.5 of these of foxgloves, and then that gives me about 120 plants. So I've got surplus plants. I can choose the best ones to plant out in the field. Some of the little skinny runts, they can just go on the compost heap. So I've got choice of good plants to put out into the field if I'm sowing extras. So tip number 5 is to buy your seeds from a reputable supplier. So I buy my seeds from Chiltern Seeds, from Plants of Distinction, and from Mole Seeds, and some other suppliers like that provide a good selection of cut flower seeds. I don't ever buy seeds from a garden centre, just because you don't know how old the seed is, and usually it's a little bit more expensive as well, and you can get more variety online. Tip number 6 is to plant more than one seed per module. So I always plant at least 2 or 3 seeds in a module, just so that I've got chance of germination in one of the modules. I also try not to sprinkle loads of seeds in one tray, because there's nothing worse than having like about 10 plants in one plug. They're just not going to do very well in there. So sometimes it's quite difficult with the very small seeds, like snapdragons for example are very small dust-like seeds. So I use either a paintbrush just to sweep them off my hand, or I would use the end of a pencil, lick it, and then get your 1 or 2 seeds on the end of the nib and try and brush it off onto the compost. So it can be really tricky not to overload the cells with seeds, especially when they're so small, but you really have to try. Otherwise, if you allow 5 or 6 seedlings to grow in one cell, they're not going to do that well. So once they have germinated, if you have got a few too many in there, you can either pull them out or just snip them with a pair of scissors, just so that you've only got 1 or 2 strong plants growing in each module. So tip number 7, I've been talking all along about sowing in seed trays, but you might ask me about sowing directly into the soil, and the answer is that I prefer to sow in these seed trays, just because it gives me so much more control over how many plants I've got, what has germinated successfully and what hasn't. So if I know that I've got the right amount of plants that I need for my bed out there, then I haven't got a row of seeded things out in the field where I've got to go out and thin them out and make sure they've got the right amount of plant spacing. I haven't got patches where things haven't germinated or I haven't managed to spread the seed properly. It is just so much easier to grow strong plants in seed trays where you can control the conditions for them. And then once you've got some nice healthy plants, they can go out into the field. Tip number 8 is to water your seedlings from underneath. This is a really important tip because I've done it myself in the past, where I've been watering my seed trays from the top with a hose pipe, and even if you try and do it gently, you can blast seeds off the seed tray, and then that's it. You've got to sow your tray again, which is really annoying. You just don't want to be doing that. You just want to get your plants ready as soon as you can and get them out into the field so that you can grow some nice flowers. So what I've had made is these, let me show you, these aluminium trays, and they've been really good for us because we can just fill these up with water. We don't fill them up with just too much water, otherwise they can end up being a bit waterlogged, but fill them up with a little bit of water, and then the roots can get a nice strong system down into the water below, rather than the water always sitting on the top of the plant and the roots not really knowing what to do. So we've put this capillary matting in as well for our soil blocks, which is on the video previously. But yeah, water from below, and then you're not going to lose all your seeds to the hose pipe being sprayed all over the greenhouse, and you're going to create nice strong downwards roots on your plants. So tip number 9 is to successionally sow. You can easily make the mistake of sowing a full packet of seeds all at once, planting them out, and then you've got just hundreds and hundreds of flowers that you don't know what to do with all at once. What you want to be able to do is sow in moderation so that you've got flowers throughout the whole summer. So the way that we do this is to research your specific variety and how long it takes to maturity. So I've just looked up larkspur. That takes 11 to 13 weeks to produce the first flower from an early spring sowing. It flowers for about 6 weeks after that. So you want to be able to put your second batch in so that when your first batch is fading, that is starting to flower at the right time. And then you've got a nice long span of flowers throughout the summer. So in my opinion, this is the most important tip, which is tip number 10. Make sure that you are sowing your seeds at the right time of year. If you look on all of your seed packets, they all have a date on when to sow them. It's really important to find out when your local last frost date is. So there's a few websites out there where you can look at maps of the UK and it will tell you roughly when the last frost date is for your area. And obviously it can vary quite a lot, but for our area, we have our last frost in about the third week in April, second or third week in April. So it's really handy to know that date, and then you can use your calendar to count back from that date. When you look at your seed packets, it will say so 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. So if you can find out when your frost date is and count back on the calendar, then you know the perfect date when you need to be starting to sow seeds. And this also means that your seedlings are going to get the perfect amount of lighting that they need. We get nice healthy plants when we start our seeds off in the third week in February, just in this greenhouse. They're getting enough light during the day to produce nice green healthy plants. I see loads and loads of posts of people online with really tall leggy plants, and they're saying, what's wrong with my plants? And it's because they're not getting enough light. So you need to make sure that if you're growing them, ideally they want to be in the greenhouse, but if not, put them on a really bright windowsill, a south facing windowsill, and keep turning them every day. Thank you so much for coming back to my new YouTube channel. This is my second video that I've filmed, and I'm really excited to share with you more videos in the future. I'd love it if you could subscribe. I'm going to keep on posting videos all summer so you can see how our field goes from how it's looking now in February through to autumn.